My dad was like that. My dad raised 12 children. My daddy could not read nor write. Never had a chance to go to school.
I am sure of myself as a person. I'm sure of my talent. I like the kind of person that I am, so I can afford to piddle around and diddle around with.
Before the world learned to smile when she spoke, before the wigs, the rhinestones, and the unmistakable voice, there was silence, mountain silence, the kind that settles deep into the bones. In a one-room cabin tucked into the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, a child learned early that life does not offer softness equally. Some are born into comfort, others are born into character. Dolly Parton did not rise by rejecting where she came from. She rose by remembering it. Every song, every act of generosity, every carefully chosen word traces back to those early years, when faith mattered more than food and music became a way to endure rather than escape. This is not a story about glamour. It is a story about restraint, about how someone can climb to the highest places without cutting ties to the lowest beginnings, and about the rare strength it takes to remain gentle in a world that rewards hardness. To understand how that strength was formed, we have to return to 1946, before the music, before the confidence, when survival itself became her first teacher. Born into almost nothing, 1946 to 1959. Dolly Rebecca Parton was born on January 19, 1946 in Sevier County, Tennessee, the fourth of 12 children in a family that owned little beyond faith, discipline, and resilience. The Parton home was a one-room cabin without electricity or running water, nestled in the Smoky Mountains, a place of beauty, but also isolation. Poverty was not an abstract concept there. It was daily life. Her father, Robert Lee Parton, could not read or write, yet carried a sharp sense of responsibility. Her mother, Avie Lee, filled the house with songs, Bible verse, and stories that gave the children something money could not: identity. Music was not entertainment. It was survival. It softened hunger. It gave rhythm to long days. It made hardship bearable. From an early age, Dolly understood that attention was currency. With 11 siblings competing for space, she learned to project, not for vanity, but for visibility. She sang in church before she fully understood the meaning of the words. She wrote songs before she understood the weight they would carry. And even then, there was intention in her voice. The family did not own much, but they owned dignity. Shoes were passed down, dreams were shared, and work was expected. Dolly absorbed all of it quietly, forming an inner discipline that would later define her career. She learned that hardship could either shrink a person or sharpen them. Years later, she would say she never felt poor, only aware. Aware of struggle, aware of gratitude, aware that nothing came free. Some people grow up chasing comfort. Others grow up learning strength. Leaving home without losing herself, 1960 to 1966. By the early 1960s, Dolly Parton was no longer just a gifted child in the mountains. She was a teenager with direction. By age 13, she was performing on local radio and television in Knoxville, Tennessee, already showing the poise of someone who understood where she wanted to go. The Smoky Mountains had shaped her, but they could not hold her forever. In 1964, the same year she graduated from Sevier County High School, Dolly made a decision that would define the rest of her life. The very next day, at just 18 years old, she packed her belongings and moved to Nashville. There was no safety net waiting for her. Only rented rooms, long walks between studios, and the quiet uncertainty that comes with betting everything on belief. Nashville was not kind to dreamers. Songwriting sessions were competitive, publishers were skeptical, and young women were often encouraged to soften their ambition. Dolly did neither. She worked relentlessly, writing songs for others while learning the mechanics of an industry that rarely explained itself. In 1966, she signed her first recording contract with Monument Records, but even then, success did not arrive as promised. Executives struggled to place her. Some thought she sounded too country. Others thought she looked too unconventional. Yet rejection did not harden her. It sharpened her patience. She continued writing, refining her voice, and studying the people who survived long enough to matter. What set Dolly apart during these years was not confidence. It was clarity. She did not chase shortcuts. She chased longevity. Every setback reinforced a lesson learned in childhood. Endure quietly, work honestly, and let time reveal the rest. Leaving home is easy. Carrying it with you is the real test. The Porter Wagoner years, 1967 to 1974. In 1967, everything changed, but not in the way Dolly Parton expected. At 21, she was invited to join the nationally televised Porter Wagoner show, hosted by Porter Wagoner, one of country music's most recognizable figures. Overnight, Dolly stepped into American living rooms across the country. The exposure was immediate. The control was not hers. Wagoner became her mentor, collaborator, and gatekeeper. Their duets climbed the charts, and Dolly's visibility soared. But with fame came a quiet imbalance. Her image, her schedule, even her creative choices were increasingly shaped by someone else's expectations. Audiences saw harmony. Behind the scenes, tension grew. By the early 1970s, Dolly's songwriting had matured beyond the format she was given. She wanted autonomy, creative, personal, and professional. Wanting more did not mean rejecting gratitude. It meant acknowledging growth. Yet separation in country music was rarely clean, especially when success was shared. In 1973, after years of internal struggle, Dolly made her decision. She would leave the show and step fully into her own career. Instead of confrontation, she chose honesty through music. That year she wrote, "I Will Always Love You," not as a romantic ballad, but as a farewell. The song was a declaration of respect without surrender, love without dependence. The split was painful. Wagoner felt betrayed. Lawsuits followed. Public opinion questioned her loyalty. But Dolly stood firm, refusing to retaliate or rewrite history. She let the song speak. By 1974, she had officially moved on, releasing solo work that proved her instincts right. The risk was enormous. The relief was quiet. What defined this chapter was not ambition. It was courage with manners. She chose independence without cruelty, growth without erasure. Sometimes the hardest goodbye is the one spoken with love. Reinventing without erasing, 1975 to 1985. By 1975, Dolly Parton stood at a crossroads that had ended many promising careers before hers. She was free from creative restriction, but freedom carried its own risk. Country music had embraced her, but it also expected obedience. When she began speaking openly about crossing into pop music, criticism followed quickly. Purists accused her of abandoning her roots. Industry insiders warned she would lose everything she had built. Dolly listened. Then she moved forward anyway. Rather than erasing her past, she reframed it. She leaned into glamour, not as disguise but as declaration, deciding that a woman could be intelligent, ambitious, feminine, and in control all at once. Albums like Here You Come Again in 1977 brought her massive crossover success, introducing her to audiences far beyond country radio. With each chart climb, resistance softened, though never disappeared. Public judgment during this era was relentless. Her appearance was mocked. Her voice was underestimated. Her business instincts were quietly questioned. Yet behind the image was precision. She owned her publishing. She controlled her schedule. She studied contracts as carefully as she studied melodies. Reinvention for Dolly was not rebellion. It was strategy. In 1980, she took another risk, stepping into film with 9 to 5. Hollywood expected novelty. Instead, they encountered discipline. The film became a commercial success, and the title song, written overnight, earned her an Academy Award nomination. She was no longer proving range. She was defining it. What made this period remarkable was restraint. She never spoke ill of country music, even when it resisted her. She never apologized for success, even when success made others uncomfortable. And she never confused visibility with worth. By 1985, Dolly had done what few artists manage, expanded without dilution. She became bigger without becoming distant. Reinvention is not about becoming someone new. It is about refusing to disappear. Love, marriage, and the choice of privacy. Long before fame complicated her life, Dolly Parton made one decision that would quietly protect it. In May 1966, at just 20 years old, she married Carl Dean, a Nashville businessman she had met outside a laundromat on her very first day in the city. It was an unremarkable setting for a relationship that would become extraordinary precisely because it refused spectacle. As Dolly's public life expanded, Carl deliberately stepped back. He avoided premieres, interviews, and industry events, choosing anonymity over proximity to fame. This was not distance born of indifference, but of agreement. Their marriage worked because it had borders. Dolly belonged to the world. Their relationship did not. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, as her career crossed genres and industries, speculation followed. People questioned how a marriage could survive such imbalance. One partner globally recognized, the other largely unseen. Dolly never corrected the assumptions aggressively. She simply lived differently than expected. What sustained the marriage was clarity. She understood that intimacy weakens when constantly observed. By keeping her private life private, she preserved something rare in celebrity culture: normalcy. Carl remained her grounding force, someone who knew her before the image hardened, before applause distorted proportion. She often said they shared laughter more than appearances. That humor mattered. It kept resentment from forming. It reminded her that success was an experience, not an identity. Decades passed. Fame multiplied. The marriage remained intact, not because it resisted change, but because it adapted quietly. Dolly never used her relationship as proof of virtue, nor as a shield against criticism. She simply refused to trade it for validation. In an industry that monetizes exposure, her greatest rebellion was discretion. What you protect from the world often becomes what protects you. Giving back without announcing it. By the late 1980s, Dolly Parton had reached a level of success that allowed her to step back and ask a different kind of question. Not what more she could achieve, but what responsibility achievement carried. In 1988, she opened Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, near the mountains that raised her. It was not designed as a monument to fame. It was designed as an economic lifeline. The region had long struggled with limited opportunity. Jobs were scarce. Tourism was seasonal. Dolly invested not for recognition, but for continuity. Dollywood created thousands of jobs and restored pride to a community often overlooked. She returned value to a place that had once given her nothing but roots. In 1995, after witnessing her father's lifelong struggle with illiteracy, she founded the Imagination Library. The program mailed free books to children from birth until age 5, regardless of income. There were no speeches announcing it, no conditions attached, just books, arriving quietly in mailboxes, teaching children to recognize possibility early. What made her philanthropy distinct was restraint. She did not brand generosity. She did not require gratitude. When praised, she redirected attention to the cause itself. Giving, for her, was not an extension of image. It was an extension of memory. She remembered what absence felt like. Over time, the program expanded globally, distributing millions of books. Still, Dolly spoke of it plainly. She framed generosity not as sacrifice, but as stewardship. Money, she believed, was most meaningful when it moved. This chapter of her life revealed something deeper than kindness. It revealed consistency. The values shaped in a one-room cabin matured into action without spectacle. She did not give because she was admired. She gave because she remembered. True generosity does not announce itself. It returns quietly to where it began, aging without apology, leaving a gentle legacy. As the new century unfolded, Dolly Parton entered a phase that many public figures resist, the long view. By the early 2000s, she no longer needed reinvention to remain relevant. Her songs were already woven into American memory. Instead, she chose something rarer, self-acceptance without retreat. Public conversations about her appearance grew louder as she aged. Dolly addressed them with humor rather than defensiveness, openly acknowledging cosmetic choices while refusing shame. What unsettled critics most was not how she looked, but how little she seemed to apologize for it. Aging, to her, was not something to conceal. It was something to navigate honestly. During these years, she continued recording, touring selectively, and collaborating across generations. Younger artists sought her not for trend alignment, but for grounding. She offered perspective rather than instruction. Fame had taught her that relevance fades faster than character. Faith remained a quiet constant, not performative, not imposed. It informed her patience, her forgiveness, and her refusal to become bitter. Losses accumulated, as they do in a long life, but resentment did not. She spoke often about gratitude as a discipline, not a feeling. By the 2000s and beyond, Dolly had become something beyond celebrity. She was cited during crises, praised for generosity during hardship, and trusted across divides that rarely agreed on anything else. That trust was earned slowly, through consistency rather than perfection. What defined this final chapter was grace under longevity. She did not chase youth. She did not fear obscurity. She simply remained present, curious, kind, and aware that life's value lies less in applause than in alignment. Her legacy was never about being remembered loudly. It was about leaving something intact. Some lives end with noise. Others leave a calm that lasts. What endures when the applause fades? When the noise finally quiets, what remains of a life is rarely the moments the world celebrated. It is the choices made when no one was watching. Dolly Parton's story endures not because she was flawless, but because she was consistent. Consistent in gratitude. Consistent in restraint. Consistent in remembering where she came from, even when the world tried to rewrite her origin. She proved that success does not require hardness, that generosity does not require spectacle, and that aging does not require retreat. In an industry built on reinvention, she chose alignment. In a culture addicted to exposure, she chose privacy. And in a world that rewards volume, she chose steadiness. Her life reminds us that legacy is not built through dominance, but through durability, through showing up the same way, decade after decade, without surrendering your core. Some people are remembered for what they achieved. Others are remembered for how they made people feel. Dolly managed both, without demanding either. If this story resonated with you, it may be because it reflects something quietly familiar. The belief that dignity still matters, that kindness still counts, and that purpose, once found, should be carried gently. Sometimes, the strongest lives are the ones that never needed to shout. If you value stories like this, rooted in truth, memory, and meaning, stay with us. There are more lives worth remembering.